The SMSF Association is urging the Senate to reject legislation that could inflict a higher tax rate on the earnings of superannuation balances exceeding $3 million after it passed without amendment in the lower house earlier this week. SMSF Association CEO Peter Burgess joining me now. Peter, your thoughts here?
Yes, look, what we've seen during the week is this legislation passed the lower house, so it is now one step closer to becoming law. This was a proposal that was first announced by the government early last year. The intent here is to impose a new tax on large superannuation balances. Our concern, though, that this is a flawed tax in the way it's been designed. The way it will work is it will capture unrealised capital gains in the calculation of earnings for this tax, and we think that it's a significant flaw in the design of this tax. It's a tax that, from the outset we've said is unnecessary. It's a tax designed to fix a problem that'll fix itself in the not too distant future. We have caps in the superannuation system now, which are designed to stop people accumulating excessively large superannuation balances, and these caps will eventually force these large balances out of the system over time. So, as I said, it's really a tax designed to fix a problem that'll fix itself in the not too distant future, but the government's clearly not prepared to wait that long.
If it gets passed by the Senate and then does become law, is it setting potentially a dangerous precedent in your view too?
Well, it is a significant departure from existing tax principles. A fundamental principle underpinning our tax system is that we only pay tax. We're only taxed on amounts that we receive. So in that regard, it's a significant departure. And, this is the feedback that we've been receiving from some of our members. They are concerned about, well, what's next? If we're going to tax unrealised capital gains in superannuation like this, are we going to see this type of approach applied to things like investment properties where you may have to pay tax on unrealised gains? So that's certainly some of the concerns that we're hearing from our members.
So what is your, pressure then, or what are you trying to say to the Senate before they get to vote on this?
Well, look, if we have to have a tax on earnings like this, well, then it's important that the tax is based on actual taxable earnings. That's basic accounting, that we only pay tax on amounts that we receive. So we have to get this calculation back to actual taxable earnings. Now, we're hearing that's not an option because some of the large public offer funds can't track actual taxable earnings down at the minimum level. And because of that, self-managed super funds, who are in the main mostly impacted by this tax, there's around over 60% of those impacted by this tax are self-managed super fund members. So, one of the issues is that this tax has been designed to suit the needs of the large funds and not self-managed super funds. And it's ironic that most members impacted are self-managed super fund members. So what we're saying to the Senate crossbench, and we've drafted amendments that will do this, they're quite simple amendments, to move to actual taxable earnings to allow those funds, self-managed super funds and other funds that are able to report actual taxable earnings, base the calculation on that. That way we are removing unrealised capital gains from the calculation. So that's what we're saying. If we can't do that for whatever reason, then let's move to something that is a close proxy to actual taxable earnings. That is the only way. If we're going to have an earnings tax, that is the only way to remove unrealised capital gains from this calculation, is to get it back to actual taxable earnings. That's the point that we're pushing with the crossbench.
Now, Peter, you're talking, of course, about the impact to the whole SMSF Foundation, but this is something that also very heavily small businesses, venture capital, startups rely on as well. What is, the flow-on effect here in your view?
Well, and exactly right, it will have a flow-on effect. The government has made the point that this is a modest change. It will only impact 80-odd thousand superannuation members, but many of those members, 50-odd thousand, are self-managed super funds, and we know there's a significant number in that pool that are small business owners. There's about 17,000 self-managed super funds out there that own business premises and farms. A lot of these funds will be impacted by this tax. Now, it's not just a headline 80,000 people that'll be impacted. Of course, it will have a flow-on effect because small business owners employ individuals, other individuals. It will have a knock-on effect to the rest of the community. So, that's what has us concerned is the impact that this is going to have. And we see this as unintended consequences on these type of sectors. Because if you're taxing unrealised gains, you're taxing small business owners and farmers on income they haven't received. So they're going to have to pay this tax, and they're going to have to find those funds from somewhere. So they're going to have to reach into their, to their reserves and so forth to pay this, their cash reserves and so forth to pay this. And that's the concern because we modelled this tax in the 22-23 income year, and the average tax liability was around $50,000. So that's not a modest amount of money for many small business owners and farmers.